spent all that time and effort doing that horrible comp plan update. I mean, it's just the insanity of the cost to do that kind of thing, but we now have to implement it, and so we have expenses of doing more efforts on that, right? So that's kind of in this thing as well.
I mean, not to mention Salem-based initiatives that are driving implementation costs as well.
Yeah.
Sorry, I don't want to speak for it, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the one positive of all the walkouts is we maybe no new bills we have to implement at our own expense.
Yeah, no, you're right. And I think that's the nature of the planning department. It's, we get a lot of responsibility. And again, there's really no revenue that gets generated from it straight back to our department anyways. But yeah, part of the personnel and services this year are for those state bill expectations that the state bills will be passed, or the ones that we already know are passed, and that we need to implement. CFAC, climate friendly and equitable communities. There's some stuff for the comp plan as well, but the significant portion of this is going to be Sherwood West and trying to really just keep things moving forward, and then that'll set us up to really, assuming we make the ask is accepted, then we'll get the money from Metro in the next fiscal year, and then continue that work, and that will be primarily funded by them. But there's sort of a gap between now and the time we get that money from Metro.
It seems to me that our overall tax base is a result of all the good work of planning and this. So even though we don't see it on paper this way, it is the first number we looked at, which is what is our tax base.
Yeah, sure. And, we're dead focused on diversifying that tax base. I mean, that is the marching order from council, and that's what we're focused on every day with Bruce now under city manager.
And there's additional revenue that the funds benefit from all their.
Yeah.
That's kind of yeah, exactly. Yeah. So.
Okay.
Property taxes. Exactly.
Life would be so much better if we didn't have to spend all this money doing unfunded mandates from Salem. Just saying.
Tell me how you feel. Thanks, sir. Thank you.
All right, Chief's up.
Good evening, committee. Thanks for having me. Just wanted to touch base real quick, something the mayor had brought up, and you're right on those numbers with Red Flex. It's always been around 7-8% that is the Sherwood population that is subjected to those citations. I'll be interested as we move forward and traffic increases down Roy Rogers and TS, what those numbers will look like. So be happy to get that to you. One of the things I wanted to touch on was 2021 was an interesting year. We lost approximately 20% of our patrol officers. When I mean by losing them, they had left along with the chief. So we were down a pretty significant number in our numbers. So all of 2022 we ran with 4 officers down, yet our calls for service were probably the highest they've been in the last 5 years. So I give credit to those that were working the road to manage that the way they did. And last year we were able to bring on a new captain as well. And one of the things that you see up there that kind of impacts our budget, sorry, it's probably in front of you, it was, and I know David talked about it, was just our increase with some of the contracts, the SPOA contracts, the COLA, all those things that we know that come every the association. And then probably the biggest hit for materials and services, and this is one of the challenges that I always talk about, is technology and how it's almost outpacing personnel costs in a lot of ways, and it's going to be a challenge in the years to come. So as you can see everything on here, I have a radio, there's body-worn cameras, we have our tasers, and there's a big company that drives a lot of that, and that service contract continues to rise year after year. We typically do 5-year contracts with them, and this was our 5th year that we had to renew this. It was a significant increase because we did get a grant the first time around, so it helped us get off the ground, but then it was left for us to pick it up. So that's where you're going to see a lot of those costs. Aside from that, we have hired everybody to fill those 4 vacancies, and we are just waiting on the last recruit who is in the academy, expected to graduate in October. Keith, the city manager, talked about our career cycle planning and trying to address some of those issues that we're facing. We are aware of 3 upcoming retirements this year, so we're trying to hire to get ahead. And we've been pretty successful with getting some lateral candidates, and I know that it was mentioned the time difference. So if we can get a lateral, we're looking at 4 or 5 months before they hit the road versus 15, 16 months. The other thing is nerve-wracking.
So safe to say you're focusing on laterals?
Yes, yes, yes. And it all comes with challenges in that arena. But DPSST is really facing a mountain right now, not only budgetarily, but probably more importantly, even if they are funded to add more classes, it's instructors. So for years, they've relied heavily on agencies to lend instructors, and agencies just can't do it. I mean, I can't afford to be sending firearm instructors, DTs, EVOC instructors down there. So getting people to come down there and teach is going to be still problematic. I tell you that because if we
Is there a good retirement base that they can tap to?
They're trying, yeah. As a matter of fact, they're trying to utilize them. It's just been a challenge, and I say that because on the horizon, if they can't fix it, a new recruit's going to be 12 months before they even get to the academy. That's what they're predicting, and that's problematic for an agency our size because we can't let somebody go if we can hire them. Now we got to figure out what we're going to do with them for 12 months. So I am grateful and thankful that we've been able to get where we're at, and the fact that we have officers on the hook right now to step in for those retirements coming up, which is great. And then that rolls into the SRO and what we're doing with that, the second SRO, and planning for that. And thankfully, it's a unique position within the police realm, and so having people that have an interest is fantastic, which we do. So our number 1 priority is patrol. So as we can backfill and get people up to speed, we'll be able to move those bodies where we need to, hopefully here in the next 4 or 5 months. Other than that, I think that's it, unless you have questions.
And I know one thing you don't see in Ty's budget is, as Keith spoke about in his budget messages, that money from the DEA, basically the program does not allow us to budget for that additional revenue that's coming in. We have to wait for it to actually come in the door, but the city is going to see some additional benefit down the road, and that just takes time.
That bill you referenced, that's to double the funding for the academy down in Salem. I doubt, every word on the street is Republicans are not coming back for this session, so that probably won't pass anyways.
Eye on the form.
Transfers, laterals.
I want to speak real quickly because we have 2 detectives in the agency, which we've moved one over to a DEA position. 2 reasons, obviously, just because there's some benefit to asset forfeiture, which of course it'd be advantageous of us to jump on that. But secondly, they're very active in hunting down fentanyl right now, and the number of fentanyl arrests that I'm seeing and pills, just this team alone, just this detective is taking off the streets it's shocking. And so I really appreciate that we had the opportunity to be there because it's at a regional level, and they're taking thousands and thousands of pills off the street that are hopefully not coming down 99 or TS. So it's been really good.
Yeah, I have a quick question for you, Ty, and I waited to ask you about the red light cameras. Is it, are you still functioning so that you're matching the car to the owner, and if you don't see the owner, then you just pass by on the ticket? Is that still the protocol?
Yeah, so citation is brought to us, and we run the plate, we bring up the registered owners. If they look similar and matching, I mean, we can't, I mean, you usually pretty clear. So obviously there's gender mismatch. Sometimes there's just things that you just can't absolutely confirm, but for the most part, yes.
How is that helping at the school, since probably that camera is catching students that are breaking the law, but they're not the owners of the car? So is there any way to rectify that, other
So-
than have a police officer sitting there?
So if there is a discrepancy on who the driver was, I send it to you, but you say it's not you. There's a declaration of innocence that you sign, and you can also nominate who the driver is.
You can still let your kid get the ticket. So
Or some good internal education.
Yeah,
Internal household education.
That felt like a gap in the system.
it's not mandated to name them, but it gives you the opportunity to.
And if I know how those cameras are configured, they're really only catching north and southbound traffic. So, for instance, students crossing over to Sunset,
Correct.
we don't have cameras.
No.
Because historically, that's not a problem.
I have a question. One of the big expenses that I know that we or one of the things that increased the contract negotiation was the sabbatical program. Is that attracting laterals at all? Is that a unique kind of thing that you think might be helpful in recruiting?
It is. People, interestingly enough, some of the recruits or some of the interviews we just conducted this week, they weren't aware of it.
Oh, great.
Until we told them, and then they were pretty excited about that opportunity and what that means coming here. So it's still fairly new. We're only the second agency in the state, and I think the last I heard, the 7th or 8th in the nation. So it's really new, and people are still trying to understand what it means. We're having to explain.
30 days off, that's what it means.
Well, I know. I'm just saying it is one of those things where it is difficult to hire, in all of the departments all over, and so it's almost like I know that others will be playing catch up, and so let's get them in the door before the other groups catch up to it, and then we'll be set for the next little bit. So anyway, that's good to hear, though, that that's having an effect.
To my knowledge, we haven't had a big homeless problem in Sherwood. I only know of one individual that is here in the city. It's over behind the theater there. What do you anticipate with this upcoming legislation?
You're talking about 3115. Yeah. We've been having a lot of robust discussions about that, and work sessions just trying to identify the best way to address it. I'll just tell you what we have seen here in the city, and it's, to your point, it's not a lot, a handful, and most of them have connections with community members here, family, or just a nexus within the city. So and I look historically, I've lived here 27, 28 years, and I haven't seen much of an influx with that regard. So I really can't speak to what 3115 is going to do on an impact-wise. I just know what we're trying to figure out. And when I say we, City Council, as far as moving forward with it. That's kind of vague, wasn't it? So I think one of the things that helps the city of Sherwood is we have just one line within the buses that ends here. So we don't have a transit center where they come and go. And typically, if we're dealing with people and it pulls us away, it's because somebody rode it out here to the end. And unfortunately, TriMet doesn't give them an opportunity to get back to a transit center. They force them off. And then we do a great job of getting them the resources and getting them what they need if we do come in contact with them. But it's pretty far and few between at this point.
Very difficult to predict the future.
Yeah.
Just don't know the impact of changes to policy in Multnomah County, to see if it changes, behavior, how the behavior changes in Multnomah County that might then impact Clackamas, Clark, or Washington County. So you just have
Time
to,
will tell.
And I will also add that one of the things, when we're discussing it as a city council, one of the things we always do is at the end, we turn to police chief and say, is this going to help or hurt your ability to deal with the people experiencing houselessness? So.
With the mental health response teams, we currently have one officer assigned to that, is that correct?
Correct.
And are there plans to increase that with the shared responsibility of the other cities with your budget or future budgets that you know of right now?
is demand warranting, additional?
Funding, yeah.
Yes. Hey, great segue. Actually, you prompted a great conversation. So actually in your binder here, I believe if you look at the mental health, behavioral health totals, I'm sorry, page 76. Last year, MHRT was involved in 61 incidents here in Sherwood. So that team is Adam Kesey and the clinician every 4 weeks. Now, that doesn't mean that when the clinician rotates to Tigard and Tualatin that they can't respond out here, but these were identified as our team alone. One of the things that we found and that we looked at was the nexus of our calls for service and mental health, and that number was 1,512, where we found a nexus. Sorry, I want to make sure I have that right. It was pretty substantial. And so, to your point, yes, an additional team would be fantastic. Right now, it's funded by Tigard, Tualatin, and Sherwood with the one clinician. They have limited hours, which is 1 p.m. to 11 p.m. What we're finding also is that mental health issues arise first thing in the morning when people have gotten up and start functioning, and we don't have a team on it at that point. So there is discussion about, can we make another team happen within the South cities? So definitely not off the table.
So you're getting 1,500 mental health calls?
No. That's when I read that, I'm like, wait a minute. They're not mental health calls. There's a nexus to the call where we've identified it's, either
There's a mental health component?
component to it, yeah. I mean, it could have been a theft.
That's like 5.5 a day.
It's like a theft, but you contact the person and you realize that, okay, there's this mental health nexus to it, and where we're spending a lot of time on there.
Okay.
I saw that number as I read it, and I'm like, so I need to confirm that. I thought, yeah, but it's a lot. We hear about it every day as far as.
And presumably, if we wanted to have a second response team, that would be something that we would have to budget for, but so would our partners, right? It would have to be kind of jointly budgeted for. Yeah.
Yeah, we're finding the rotation is really, really beneficial, and I've talked about it before, is because they move around, and so these teams have a really good grasp on who is in need of help, because they could be in Tigard and they come in here to Tualatin or into Tualatin or Sherwood, and the team knows them, and it's not like we're learning about them for the first time, and so a lot of sharing of information has been really good as well.
I just had a quick question on that topic. Were you guys able to use any of your opioid funds towards the mental health?
We have been using our opioid funds. We haven't identified specifically what we're going to use them for, but that's one of the things we're discussing. Yeah. It's not, the opioid, as you know, is not a game changer in terms of dollars. I'm trying to remember off the top of my head. I think it's like $12,000 or $15,000.
Thanks, Chief.
It's good? All right.
Rolling, I'm impressed. Hello, I'm Kristen Schweitzer. I'm the Community Services Director. I think I've met all of you. So thank you for being here tonight. So tonight we decided we were going to do this a little bit different. I have staff here to support me. Cheerleaders. Minus Lance. Lance is out of town. But I was just going to try to do the brief overview. Since we have so many divisions or departments within the division, I think we'll make things go a little bit faster. So that's what we landed on. So first up, we have the library. So just a few highlights that I wanted to point out. We provided over 400,000 checkouts of physical and digital collections, and that is up 34% compared to last year, and that's up 5% from pre-pandemic. So we've returned and then gone beyond, which we are very happy about. We welcomed nearly 126,000 people in the library this year. So thrilled about that as well. Yeah.
How many unique people?
I'm sorry, what was that?
How many unique visitors?
126,000.
No, that's not.
More visitors?
So we use a door counter. I mean, we could use that. We could do unique checkouts, but we use a door counter. So obviously it doesn't.
I think the
identify
the unique number of people that check out or engage in programs would be a very interesting metric.
Off the top of your head. So that'd be 15,000, yeah.
But how many of them are like actively used in it? It doesn't need to be answered today, but I think those
Okay,
are metrics
sure.
that I'd be interested in
Yeah, absolutely.
following over
Yeah, I
time.
know we've looked at those
Yeah.
before when we were doing the monthly reports, so we'd be happy to get that to you. One of the goals for next year, one of the big goals, is to promote and the formation of a library foundation. We recognize that we need to look for ways to support the library financially, and we need to come up with some sustainable funding. So that's one of the things that we are actively working on. We have some new energized people who are sitting on the library board who are very excited about that, as well as friends who are actively engaged. So we're hoping for good things moving in that direction. Going on to the actual numbers. The biggest thing to take a look at is revenue. As many of you know, or everybody knows, we received quite a bit of revenue from WCCLS, and we were notified earlier this year that instead of a 3% standard increase, our increase was going to be anywhere from 0% to 2%. They ended up landing on a 1% increase, but we had budgeted at a 0% increase. And we assumed that that's what we were going to get, and we left it that way once we found out that we were actually going to get 1%. On top of that, we did try to cut back on material and services, and I think that it ended up being about $35,000. So we're trying to make some adjustments, knowing that that delta continues to rise. We're in the third year of a 5-year levy, so we're really trying to look at what can we do in the next 2 years to hold on until we have an opportunity, or we're going into the third year, I should say, until we have an opportunity to hopefully ask for more support and increase the levy.
And remind me, normally, when we collectively with the county looks to do the next renewal, it's normally during the year 4?
Correct. So
it would be.
So that they have 2 opportunities to go out in case
Yep.
it fails the first time. Yeah.
I mean, so that it would be implemented to, yes, try to correct this situation.
And they're starting to talk about it, actually, next week's the first meeting when they're actually, starting to talk about the levy and what that might look like. So many cities are faced with the same challenges, and all of our expenses going up are due to just increased cost in personnel. We haven't hired anybody new, we haven't been bringing on FTEs, it's just been the cost of doing business.
But kudos, year over year, that's a very small change. Last year's to this year's.
Yeah, I mean, I think, the supplemental information we were sent out the other day is very interesting to me, looking at library, 9 years ago, 10 years ago, it was essentially neutral,
Right.
expenses and revenue, it was a $6,000 gap, so neutral budget, and now we're, almost a $500,000 in deficit. You can see the expense of it as almost, although the last two fiscals, to everyone's credit, have been fairly flat outside of,
Right.
obviously there was a lot of growth, in the interim there. The revenues aren't keeping pace at all. Question for you, David, I'd be interested to know at a later date, doesn't have to be for part of this budget cycle, but, so we get 1.02 from WCCLS. How much do the taxpayers of this jurisdiction pay into that, right? Are we getting back? It's kind of like we talk about with the school, right?
We contribute.
I want to know the number. Like, because that's it's interesting to me whether we can do anything about it or not. I think that's important to understand. If our taxpayers in Sherwood are paying, I'm just gonna make up a number, 1.2, and we're only getting back 1.0, like we're subsidizing, other libraries, and that there may be good reason for that. But it's still information that's important.
And it's important to note that the outside of the city, the unincorporated properties also pay the tax.
Of course, yeah.
And then we serve those folks.
Yeah, and that's a little harder, harder to say, right? But
Yeah, and it is also tough because we get to also use those resources, right? Even if the book is not in our building, if it's in the system, we get to be able to check it out at the building, right? And so there's stuff like that. And then part of the reason I think why the library committee is so excited about the foundation is it does allow us to, again, with the school district, we can keep that money, some of that money local, and we can decide, as a foundation or committee, how to spend that on. It may be capital improvements. It may, you know what I mean? Like it gives us more control that is not governed by the levy or.
our net deficit has doubled in 3 years, so it's not a sustainable track, right? So we have to figure out something, right?
100%.
Yeah.
And just to connect the dots to my comments at the beginning of the meeting, the county had a $40 million budget hole, so they've chosen to cut monies going to cities for libraries as part of that solution, and amongst other items. So I don't anticipate this to change. And we are having conversations with the county at a very high level right now is when they do go out for next levy, because the levy is only the levy contributes to this, and the county through county property taxes contribute to the WCCLS system. So personally, I would like to see a levy that provides the majority of that support and is segregated from other county funds. If we can
Where they get to decide,
where right now they can, because it's general fund money,
they can cut.
they can make decisions.
They made
Because that's not what the people, when they're voting for the levy, they're voting I'm voting for it's like when I vote for my money to go to TVF&R, it goes to TVF&R, right? If I say I'm voting to add extra money to the library, that's where, as a voter, I'm expecting it to go, not to be siphoned off and funding something else.
Yeah, and I want to make sure I say this clear. It's not that they're siphoning it off. So the levy money for the library is going to the library system, but there's about 40% on top of that the county's putting in. It's traditional.
Oh, okay.
Well, 100% of the levy comes, but the
base funding is being siphoned
Right,
off.
so they've never had a levy that fully funds that,
Gotcha.
and that would be the best way to handle it, because to your point, then it's protected. And
Yep.
Right. Absolutely.
Right, understood you correctly, the proposed revenue does not include the 1%?
The proposed revenue includes the 1%.
Yes.
Oh, it
We
does.
budgeted assuming that we were getting nothing. So we did not increase our
In your
expenses.
initial
In fact, we decreased our.
Gotcha, okay.
in addition, the foundation, great idea, excited about that. It could have it can have some short, immediate term payoffs and have some long-term payoffs. And then the other thing that I'm personally excited about, a lot of our boards and commissions, the opportunity of utilizing the strength of our volunteers on boards and commissions is to find more volunteers. Because if we can, and that's COVID. I don't know the facts on this because but I suspect we had a pretty good volunteer base pre-COVID in different parts of the city, and then COVID ended all that, and now we have to rebuild it.
Yes, the volunteer program was definitely impacted, especially in the library because it was closed. At the the senior center, we were still serving and delivering meals and did continue to rely upon volunteers. And then with the demands over there, we have really increased our volunteer needs over there as well. So when people are looking for opportunities, there's a lot more out there right now. And that might be something that we need to look at in the future as well, as where do we focus our efforts and volunteers and where is it most needed, and how do we need to look at siphoning off to a certain extent the senior center and really focusing on the volunteer program there and rebuild more of the library.
And I'll bring up something I think I've mentioned before in regards to the library. And this is, more of a policy question, but I think there is an opportunity to look at. There are some services that we provide at the library that potentially could be monetized because they're premium services or experiences or whatnot, right? And I'm not saying everything. I'm just saying there may be, that's an opportunity to maybe cut this deficit a little bit over the long term as you look at, like, if you're bringing in a world-renowned speaker and you're paying them, this is an example, and this doesn't just apply to library, right? And you're paying them $10,000. Is that something that maybe you charge a small, you can recoup some of that money, right? Because people are flocking to see this person, or, some other things like that, right? So, again, these are offline questions, but just thoughts in my head that I've.
Well, and most likely, if we're looking to charge for services, we would move those programs to the Art Center or to the Senior Center to be able to make sure that we're providing free access to all here at the library. So it would most likely be.
Yeah, and I think that dovetails with the idea that we should be looking at this holistically, right? Like in your department particularly, right? Like all these services we provide, where are the ones that absolutely have to be free and should be free, and I fully support that, and where are the ones where there's opportunity to monetize, and is that balance, at the right balance? Totally agree. Yeah.
And we do just.
And I know you do. I know you do.
We also. We don't pay $10,000 for a speaker. Just make sure you know that.
Yeah, I'm sorry for making.
Let's get the record straight here, Counselor.
I'm sorry for making up an example that wasn't accurate. That's my bad.
$9,999, right?
That would be something that would usually be covered through a grant.
Yeah, thank you, and I'm glad you did that, because I don't want someone to take away my made-up example as something that's happened.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Thank you very much, and I appreciate you and your team's focus on the fiscal part of this. That's really important with kind of where this is headed, and it's great work. Thank you.
Now we are at Fieldhouse. As I mentioned, Lance is not here this evening. I'm covering it for him regardless. We are still working on rebuilding the Fieldhouse and rentals since the pandemic. The other thing that has impacted the rentals is we're really not utilizing the field until after 5 o'clock every day. And that's because we have a lot more people over at Public Works now with the broadband offices over there. And one, we lost the party room and have turned that into office space. And two, there's just absolutely no parking. So most of our programs are happening after everybody leaves during the day, and then people are coming in the evening to do rentals and meetings. So we're still working on building that back up. We're getting close to where we were, and we're seeing more and more interest.
Need a gravel lot back there in the back right.
Right. Yeah. So not too much else to share there. As for the numbers, again, the only increase in cost really is just personnel. And this is another area where we were at a point years ago where we were covering our costs, and with the cost of personnel going up, even though we haven't added any FTEs, we're working to bring in that revenue to get that more even. Recreation and sports leagues, as you all know, we no longer coordinate all of the school district fields. The only field that we coordinate the use of is up at Snyder Park. And I actually noticed that in looking at this, that revenue is not showing up here. And I believe it, because it's going to the turf replacement fund.
Yeah, so that revenue is going in the general construction fund to cover the costs, because in the asset plan in a few years, we're looking to replace that. We'll have the funds in there to cover
what is that revenue number?
I think it was about 80.
86.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, so it's double the cost. Okay, good.
Correct, yeah. So, but just looking at it and seeing no revenue, to explain that.
Well, and it should be noted too that the school district is very open to discussing bringing back that agreement, the field maintenance agreement, and potentially the centralized scheduling again. So,
And that's why I haven't wanted to close down this department. I know we've talked about it, but I'm like, let's just wait and see what happens.
I know we're not talking about this yet, but when that turf gets replaced, I'm sure there's people that would want to buy part of it for their yards. It may not be good to play on anymore, but hey, I'll take some in my backyard. I know. Hey,
if only my HOA allowed it.
I know, I'm just saying, I don't want it thrown out. I don't want it thrown out. Hey, I know, I was gonna say, I even got my first house, my backyard was all sod from, and it was awesome because they cut the sod and then they just put it out on a Facebook group and it was all gone by noon.
I had an agreement lined up to buy a piece of the last Autzen field a couple years ago that when it got replaced, but I let it go to somebody else.
Oh, there we go.
But we need to support the water fund.
Hey. All right.
Moving on to the Art Center, a few highlights include that this year our rentals are up 23%.
Awesome.
Class fees are up 24%, and ticket sales are up 30%.
Wow.
And going into summer, we already have 17 camps that are full with a waiting list. So we are, I don't know if I should say busting at the seams yet, but we're busting at the seams, Shanda says so. And this doesn't include the revenue that's going to be coming in from the new restaurant. So once we start adding that in, because that helps support the Art Center, things will look even better. On this slide, well, I know in the book, do you want to talk about the other revenue with the TLT? Or just because that's a little...
Yeah, so in this book, you'll notice, wow, there's a significant increase in revenue, and that was just the decision that was made at a work session that we're going to utilize the transient lodging tax monies to support the Arts Center, which the Arts Center is, that's an allowable, I guess, expense to utilize the transit lodging tax because it does bring in a lot of folks from outside the city. But then what that does is that frees up other unrestricted dollars normally that the general fund would support the Arts Center that now we're utilizing to help support the Public Art Fund and the Economic Development Fund. So that's why you see that huge increase in revenue. But that transient lodging tax revenue had been accruing for a number of years. So you're not going to always see this large one-time, every year. It's not going to increase that much every year. We're going to get back to normal levels the following budget year.
And that makes total sense, and thank you. The one thing I would add, at least from my point of view, and we've talked about this in previous budget years, the more we can get the Arts Center to break even,
right.
As we face budget challenges down the road, it creates a safety net for the Arts Center, so we don't have to look at cuts there because it's running itself.
Part of that analysis that I sent the committee the other day, I removed this transfer in a dollar so you could see, okay, if we're comparing to prior
that's
year.
why I was
That's why.
confused. I'm like,
Well,
how is that?
because on this slide,
Yeah.
right. I mean, we're doing
made
well,
sure to
but not
remove
that
it.
well.
So if we're compared to prior year, let's remove
Apples to
this.
apples.
Okay.
Stand
Not
up and
347%.
So,
Yeah.
on the note of revenue generation, have we done any work on looking at implementing kind of the surge-based pricing, right? Where we've talked about it a bunch of times, right? Where the highest demand times we're going to charge more than we are on a Tuesday morning for those things we've talked about.
For over at the Art Center?
Yeah.
So we have done a couple different models over there where there's peak time and then also structure where if you're if you're renting for, if you have a rehearsal, it can't be on a Friday night because that's another peak time that someone might want to
Or you gotta pay for
rent.
it, yeah.
And structuring it so that if you come in for a show, you get a certain number of days and hours so that it's a package deal and you're paying a premium rate, but you can only use those during certain hours. So we have played with that and made adjustments over the years and definitely had that peak non-peak time, so that people can come in potentially during the daytime and pay less. We're also trying to make sure that we're staying competitive. As you know, there's some new art centers, the new Beaverton Center that just opened up last year, 2 years ago.
It's not worth
Not worth it?
When people ask me, they say, where to go, I go, you have to come to the Sherwood Art Center. That other thing, it just does not work. It's not functional. There's a lot of flaws to it. That's my story. I'm sticking to it.
It's a related question. Probably applies more to the classroom space than the theater space or the big space. But how, if there's how much, like if somebody says, hey, I want to use a classroom tomorrow, is it like, oh, it's too late, we have to plan? Like, what's that window where like you could actually have like last minute, booking kind of
If
thing?
it's available and staff is there, which they're there during the daytime
You could
too,
support it
then
same day
absolutely,
even.
yeah.
Okay.
If we can make it work, we're as flexible as can be. But we have people that are booking 18 months out as well,
Right.
for bigger events.
Right. I'm just
So-
thinking like that's an opportunity where that could be like really reasonably priced if somebody comes in and it's sitting there open and okay, yeah, sure, we'll
Yep.
charge you $100 or whatever.
Yeah, and
So,
especially, if it's during the day and we're already there and,
For, just kind of riffing off that a little bit, for the future, a great metric to track is the all said and done vacancy rate. How well are we doing at keeping that room full all year long? All those rooms, I should say.
Yeah. And we could get some of that information,
Okay. Can I go back to volunteers real quick?
Sure.
I was thinking about this too. We spend some time honoring our volunteer boards and commissioners. We have a dinner and a little celebration. We should really consider doing that for all of our other volunteers. Having a celebration, a dinner at the Arts Center, maybe combine the two, make it more of a party. Something that all those volunteers have to look forward to every year.
We did, and we did it in a couple different formats. We had a theme almost every year, and we've done it here and we've done it over at the Arts Center. But it trickled a little bit. We weren't getting a lot of response, and we also recognize that people want to be thanked differently. To some people, that means a lot, and to other people, they're like, just send me a gift card and say thank you, or they don't want to be thanked. So we try to make sure we reach out in a couple different ways throughout the year to recognize people. I think now that we have such a larger volunteer base with the senior center, that would definitely be worth revisiting. When we were doing it before, we weren't managing the senior center. So, we would have like 25 people show up, and it was fun, but you never knew for sure.
And combining it with the boards and commission dinner, and then,
Right.
and not only does it honor the people who are volunteering, it's also a great way to advertise.
Right,
that we
absolutely.
have these volunteer opportunities, and you can be a part of that, so.
Yeah, that's something we can look at. We do budget for volunteer recognition every year and kind of decide how do we want to spend the money. So that's something that could be implemented fairly easily. And we have a lot of local businesses that will donate to those events as well.
This is not a question, but I've been to 2 events there for the cultural arts, the Diwali and the Lantern Festival. They were remarkable. I know this is our first year, but it's one of those things that, again, the more events we can do like that, those are the kinds of things that I think make Sherwood a special place, right? You just go, oh. And in fact, I know it brought people there, and there was the people that lived there that I've talked to were thrilled that they were able to host essentially an event like that. So anyway, just pass that along.
We have a new, fairly new arts commission. There's been a lot of turnover, and they're really excited to do events and to do cultural activities. So it's a great group.
Shelby's car.
Mine doesn't sound like that.
I think it's Doug.
Townhouse first.
Worried about it. Speaking of events and volunteers.
Yeah, there we go. Speaking of arts, events and volunteers. So this is, events and volunteers is music on the green, movies in the park, openings, any type of special activities that we're doing. One of the things that we have done is we are now doing 5 evenings of music on the green. We did that last year during the pandemic. We did 3. Well, first year we did 0, and then we did 3, and then we did 5. And with the cost of bringing the bands in and the music, we've decided to really put our efforts into those 5 concerts and try to make them really special instead of watering it down and doing 7. We have been doing more movies because that's a little bit easier to do. It's less staff time, it's more economical. We can do that for pretty inexpensive. So we're trying to make sure we're engaging the community, but
And I plead my ignorance if we relocated it, but are we doing movies still with the park? Or are we doing the movies at the arts?
we're doing them down at the park, movies in the park. Yep.
Brilliant.
That sounds good.
And we still are having some success with getting sponsorships and all that good stuff.
We are. It was down a little bit the last couple of years, but we're seeing that tick back
Should you
up.
take over the beer garden and use that as a revenue stream?
If we wanted the city to go in the beer business, we sure could.
So that's like,
Attorney?
no, it's a historical
Oh, that's
society.
true.
It's a
They use
And
it
that's
as
their
a
main
fundraiser.
fundraiser.
is.
Please don't
That-
take
I
that
was
away
gonna
from
say.
us.
You don't want to.
Way to advocate, Tim. Way to advocate.
Just joking.
Excuse me, I did not say anything.
Nope.
Kristen, so on that note, what percentage of the cost of the park
I believe we were at about half most recently. We had eked that up closer to 70% when our sponsorships were doing better. Correct. But we're at about half now. I think so. We're constantly working on getting new sponsors. Like Sherwood Broadband is one of our sponsors this year. It's like, yeah, you guys can have a booth. You're going to pay for it, though. Absolutely. Yeah, it's a great.
It's a no-brainer. We want, only 85%, take rate for Sherwood Broadband Town. That's the target. David and I nod. We like that. We like that number.
Right.
We have a new booth too, which I just helped design. It's really cool, so I'll have to send it out to them.
Awesome.
It's a tattoo. I heard there's a real tattoo element, so we can tattoo the Sherwood Broadband on the shoulders of all the kids.
And you know what? You get to be the model first.
No, I get to. I'm the tattooist or tour.
Yeah, right in your forehead. Yeah. You should just be the hugger afterwards, right? The kid's crying, you're the guy who's just hugging the kids. Make Uncle
I'm running.
feel better.
Weird.
It's getting weird.
Yeah, we're getting a little rummy. Yeah, getting a little
So
rummy.
a few quick highlights on the senior center. So far to date, we have served 13,743, and I say we, it's Maya. I have nothing to do with it, so it's Maya
All by
and
herself.
Dominic and
You're
staff.
Superwoman.
Which is
Daily? Daily? 13,000 daily?
13,743 to date, and that's 1,000 more meals than we served in 21-22.
Wow.
And with a month left, so we're already 1,000
Oh, no.
ahead and still have a month to go in the fiscal year. So they just keep coming.
What's the daily average?
Maya?
Maya?
Great question.
Say 56.
66.
What was the question he asked that you need?
So, I know you either started or expanded delivery during COVID. I assume that has continued. Yeah. Is is there any kind of qualification for delivery versus coming and eating at the thing, or is it anybody who wants delivery, you'll service that?
It's anybody who wants to.
Okay. Oh, yeah, yeah, that's great. I like that. Yeah. And I'll just, not a budget thing, but I had the opportunity to be a substitute delivery driver for a week or so. It's been a while now, and it was such an amazing experience. I need to do it again, so I'll contact you. I'm not ready. I don't think I have the time to commit to regular route, but I'd love to get on your substitute list for sure.
She wrote that down.
Yeah, also, not a budget thing, but I've talked to a handful of people who eat there, and one of the things that I've heard consistently is whoever you have cooking there now is phenomenal and is a magician with whatever they're getting. So-
Dominic, yep.
Dominic, okay, perfect. I'm just saying, the word is out. That may
Yes.
also increase the numbers,
Yep,
and which is great
absolutely.
because I'd rather it be used, than not.
So going way back before we took over management of the senior center, they were averaging 13 to 15 people a day to eat meals there. And the food, it just wasn't good. So, yeah, we're very proud of the quality of food.
You look at the menus,
Yeah, well, the food quality, but the social aspect,
Yeah.
right, of it, and getting
Absolutely.
those people to connect and find commonality, like, it's just
Yeah,
phenomenal.
and the food is good, they're healthy servings. It's very common that guests will bring a Tupperware container to take their leftovers back because that's their dinner.
Yep, absolutely.
Well, And if you're-
not
if-
old enough to go, I was there as a guest. And it was lovely. So.
If you deliver the food, make sure you eat before you go on that route because your car smells wonderful and you're delivering food to everyone and it's hard not to
You're the
like.
reason why they started taping the bags.
Yeah. Everyone that I delivered to got their meal.
Another
Doug's just grazing through the town.
Another quick highlight for the senior center is the Pearl Room, and that's the mental health support program that has started over there. And we wanted to mention that that's been done really just with administrative cost and is really run by, in cooperation with George Fox University and with volunteers. So it's a great mental health support program and opportunity for everyone in the community at minimal cost to
Are
the
people
city.
utilizing it? Great.
So does the PD need to drop off people from time to time?
Want to drop somebody off?
Does Ty bring people by from time to time?
No, I was thinking about that when he was talking though. Right. Right.
Well, there's
Not that I'm aware of.
people call 911 or the non-emergency line for a lot of reasons, and sometimes it could potentially be that you're of a certain age or situation that, hey, there's this great program at the senior center.
Right, no, that's a great point.
Just,
We need to make
they're
sure.
not a criminal, they're not violent, they're just
Yep.
needing a friend.
Right.
Talk to him,
Yes?
With 201 and Home and Wellness Center and 988 as a resource for that exact situation.
Awesome.
Brilliant.
They're already on it.
Way beyond me, and I appreciate it.
It was part of the setup of it. Sorry.
Great.
No, I'm glad you're speaking up.
I have a question, quick.
I'm sorry.
Do you feel like you have enough resources for that at this moment, or do we need to budget more for the mental health at the senior center?
To the future, our next year is being looked at by the state of Oregon funding it for the next fiscal year. We're very excited with the program model implemented to the state for all of the nations and also the other senior centers around. They're really wanting to invest in that to support as well.
Okay, thank you.
And the last,
Can I
I'm sorry.
just,
Mhm.
on that particular issue, anything I can do to help from, elected lobbying in Salem for those dollars and programs, because that's
Okay.
really important. And I'm very excited that we're getting recognized for taking a lead in that effort. So let's see if we can leverage that, so.
not the last bit of good news for the senior center, but I did also want to mention the community development block grant that we applied for, and will be receiving and should have those dollars coming in after the beginning of the fiscal year, and that was for $208,635. And that's to replace the siding and the windows at the senior center.
That's right.
So that's something that had been budgeted, or we were looking at needing to do through Craig's department, and we're able to reduce that cost significantly.
Awesome. Great job, everybody in your team.
I have more, do I have more?
Yeah. Just
Or
yourself.
me? It's just me,
Well, can I, just one more,
but I don't make that much.
one more kudos for the senior center and the staff and everyone involved. And just a reminder, and I'll go back to the COVID when we were on lockdowns. I'm pretty sure we were the only center like this that continued to deliver meals during the lockdown.
Hot meals.
Hot meals during that time, and you guys deserve major kudos for that, because a lot of organizations shut down.
They worked very hard, yeah. So the last one is just community services management, and that's just my time, I believe. Well, it's not just my time. I don't make that much money, and
Probably all
There's a
those.
typo of some sort she's claiming.
Isn't Leah in there? Or is that because of benefits and all that?
That's the fully loaded cost.
Oh, sorry. I guess I do. Take home that much. So there's no significant changes there. Questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Feels like an opportune time.
Yes, that's what I was just gonna say. How do you feel about breaking for the night, since it's almost 9 o'clock?
Oh, Craig, so sorry.
I know.
Can you do it in 5
It should
minutes?
probably get it done pretty fast, and then we're done with item D.
I mean, he's got a lot. He's got
Yeah.
He's got a lot.
He's got a lot.
He's got a lot, and he
deserves.
We need quality time with Craig.
Yeah.
we deserve a lot of time with Craig. And we deserve to be awake.
I'm awake.
I'm fine to
No,
stay
you're
if
not.
everyone. I
I'm
didn't realize
okay.
Craig was the last one. I'd be willing to go.
Yeah, I'm okay.
I'm
I
okay.
came late, so I'll stay late.
That's fine.
Hey, Miss Katie, it's your thing.
I think it's a good stopping
think it's
point.
time to stop.
Yeah.
Don't worry, you can hear from Craig a lot on all the other ones
Yeah.
too.
We get a full day with Craig.
All right, meeting adjourned.
He's gonna be sitting up here for a while.